What's up, guys? Today I wanted to go over just pretty much some basic principles that you should be aware of just to make sure that your training is going properly. I don't want to kind of overcomplicate things, and I know there's already a lot of overcomplication, and there's a lot of maybe uncertainty and kind of randomness in the whole fitness world, where people on social media tell you one thing and then others tell you another thing, and you don't know what to believe, and you ultimately just kind of continuously change up your whole routine, and you end up not making progress in the end. But pretty much, I'm just gonna name off some things and really try to explain them and kind of help you kind of understand why they're important and maybe how you can implement these into your own routine. And I do want to kind of start off by saying that you should be kind of making your own routine. It's really difficult to kind of follow someone else's routine and other people's routine that you may see on social media. And simply because of the fact that everyone is different, everyone has a different set of genetics. Everyone responds differently to different exercises, different rep ranges, for example. Um, and I think above all, not everyone enjoys doing the same um, training, training styles, training exercises. You know, the point is everyone is different, and you should kind of try it and make something of your own. This way you can kind of adhere to it for a long period of time, and that's where the real progression kind of comes from. But we'll start off and set that as number one. So kind of make it your own, kind of personalize your own routine. That is number one. Now, how do you go about this? That brings me to number two. So we're always going to start off with some sort of split. So a training split, if you don't know, it's pretty much it consists of a week, and you kind of decide which days go where in terms of the muscle groups. So which muscle groups are you going to hit on these certain days, and when are your rest days coming in? So that is pretty much how you would kind of make it split. But pretty much, I think every single split should have at least one rest day. And this is because you cannot just simply train every single day for obvious reasons, for recovery reasons. You know, your body needs a rest, especially if you're training very kind of intensely. And then kind of, I've found that over time, you may need to implement another rest day. So meaning two rest days in total. Or maybe you're someone with that kind of, you're that genetic anomaly where you can handle all these 6 days for kind of years on end. So if that is you, then you can continue training 6 days a week. But like I said, everyone is different. But what I found for myself is I need that second rest day because I just feel gassed because of all the intense training. But I think after this, after you kind of figure out some sort of split, comes number three, which is kind of training volume. So for those of you that don't know what training volume is, it's pretty much the amount of sets that you're allocating to each muscle group. So am I training, how many sets am I doing for legs? So on a weekly basis, that would be my training volume for legs, and etc. for every single other body part. And this training volume is a very kind of a weird dilemma, especially like I said in the beginning with social media, because there's some people that will tell you that you need to train with high volume, meaning a lot of sets, and there's others that will tell you low volume, meaning a smaller amount of sets but super intense. I think what you need to do is what I said in the beginning and figure out a happy medium for yourself. So what works better for you? You know, try out the higher volume. If it works for you, then stick with it. And lower volume, if it works for you, then stick with it. And maybe if you want to work somewhere in the middle, then go for that. The point is that you have to try these things out and really figure out what works for you. And I think once you find this amount of training volume that works with you, once you figure out your training split, so what days you want to hit which muscle groups and how many times a week, um, then that brings to number 4, which is kind of the exercise selection. So which exercises will you be kind of doing to allocate this training volume into your specified muscle groups? So are you doing hack squats for legs? Are you doing leg extensions, hamstring curls? What are you doing for every single muscle group? So this is another kind of very personal based thing, because as I said in the beginning, everyone responds differently to every exercise, and not everyone is going to kind of feel a muscle when they're back squatting, barbell squatting. Not everyone is going to find that very connective. So you have to kind of figure out and take the time to kind of maybe run a certain routine for a set amount of months, and then switch it up, and then figure out over time what works for you, pretty much. But moving on to number 5, it is training frequency. This one kind of comes in with the whole training split, which pretty much frequency comes down to how many times a week do you train a muscle group. So there are tons of studies online that kind of suggest that the higher your frequency, the more muscle growth and the more progress you'll be able to get out of each muscle. But I think, once again, it's all personal based. Some people can't train legs 3 times a week. It's not going to happen. Some people can't do it. But like I said, if you're someone who can, then could do it and continue to do it. And I do think a lot of this whole frequency thing does come down to, what are your weak points? What is your main focus? And you kind of take it from there. If you're super weak in your legs, then you might kind of benefit from having that 2 leg day a week, or maybe even 3 if you can find use out of it. But like I said, it's all personal based, and you need to kind of figure out what works for you. I do also want to mention that if you're someone that is new, meaning within the first 2 years of training, you don't really need to worry about frequency. That is because your body is kind of fresh to this whole muscle growth and this whole training thing, the whole stimulus thing. So anything at all that you do will emit growth. You'll get stronger, you'll get bigger, you'll get overall just more endurance, just overall more efficient in training, because you're just completely new to it. So your body's going to respond very reactively, very quickly. But over time, after these maybe 2 years, let's say, that's when you kind of need to implement and kind of adjust things accordingly to fit your needs. But moving on to number 6, that is recovery. So this kind of goes hand to hand with training volume, though, because if your training volume, as I was saying, if you find it's too overwhelming, let's say you're doing high volume, you're trying it out, and if you seem overwhelming, if you seem overly sore for days on end, then you're probably not recovering properly. You probably need to back off the training volume, or you need to maybe back off the frequency. But it usually comes down to the training volume, because obviously when you're doing too much, you're going to feel it. It's pretty self-explanatory, but this is why you need to kind of be aware of your training volume and kind of figure out that happy medium, as I was saying. But recovery is absolutely essential. You need to be making sure that each muscle group is receiving at least 48 hours, 2 days minimum, before you kind of retrain it. So let's say I do legs Monday and I want to retrain it Wednesday. Well, that would be considered 48 hours. However, for legs, it's a little different sometimes, especially it is dependent on the person. But it could be more beneficial if you have more than 48 hours before you retrain them, to allow those muscles to fully recover. And that's because, if you don't know, the legs are obviously the biggest muscle group on the body. So that means they demand more energy, they demand more kind of stimulus and take a higher toll on the body. So that's why they need that higher recovery time, which is why I'm saying it could be beneficial to let them rest for maybe even 3 days. So instead of hitting them Wednesday again, you're going to hit them Thursday or Friday. And this kind of goes for almost every other muscle group besides super small muscle groups. So we'll just go one by one and kind of go about it. So chest and back, you could probably get away with 48 hours of recovery, and then you can retrain it again. So if you hit it, let's say you hit it Tuesday, well, you could hit it again probably Thursday, or depending on how your split goes, later in the week. And same goes for chest. However, things get a little different when you're moving into the smaller muscle groups, such as arms, such as your calves, shoulders. These are smaller muscle groups, so they don't take that high of a toll on the body, and they don't really require as much recovery time because of that. If you've never kind of realized, whenever you're doing like an arm day or something like, or even you're training calves, you need to be kind of hammering these in an abundance of sets, because it takes them a good amount, depending on the person, as I was saying, to kind of get them sore even. But like I said, it all comes down to the person. So personally, I like to train these things at least 2 times a week, so the smaller muscle groups, because you're kind of able to do that. But I've done three times a week in the past for these smaller muscle groups, and I've done just fine. But obviously I'm running a whole different split now, so it's completely different. But I think if you're kind of trying to get the most out of your training, that kind of brings me into the next point, is number 7, and that is your technique. So what is your technique like? So your training form. If you've never heard of training form, your training technique, it pretty much boils down to the way you're executing an exercise. So, this is pretty critical that you're learning and you're practicing proper technique, not only to prevent injuries, but also it is essential to kind of optimize your whole progression and the kind of be more efficient with your time and the whole effort that you're putting into your training. You can't just be mindlessly training and expect the most results that you can get. I'm not gonna lie, you can probably get some results, some progress by having kind of terrible form and technique, but I think over time it's gonna catch up to you. You're gonna get hurt, or you're gonna tweak something. You're not gonna feel muscle as good, and that's an issue. So your technique is essential, arguably the most important thing on this list. But moving on to number 8, and you need to be able to kind of connect with the muscle that you're training, and that is called mind-muscle connection. For those of you that don't know what it is, it pretty much comes down to your ability to connect with a muscle group as you're kind of doing each rep. So it's kind of complicated. It sounds complicated, but I think during the actual action of your set and an exercise, you'll kind of understand it. It's kind of better if you kind of do it yourself instead of hearing someone explain it or talk about it. But pretty much, I'll give an example. So let's say, if I'm sure everyone has done some sort of pec deck. So as you bring your arms close to your chest, and you kind of set it back, and you feel that pull on the muscle, and you kind of contract it, that is pretty much the whole muscle, that's called a muscle contraction. And pretty much that, the more you can feel that, the better your mind muscle connection is. So the only way to improve it is to kind of practice kind of thinking and kind of improving your ability to kind of do these contractions, do these quality contractions. So this kind of takes time. You're not going to get it straight away. It just comes naturally. However, there is some things that you can do to kind of boost this. So one of them we already talked about, which is technique. Another thing is slowing down your rep tempo, which kind of comes in with technique. Pretty much is the rate in which you do your reps. So are you just rushing through your eccentrics all the way down, or are you kind of controlling and really kind of milking every inch? And then this, I think also it would be, this also comes into your exercise selection. You know, are you choosing exercises that you can connect with? You know, that's what we talked about, and this is really important because if your whole goal is muscle growth, well, this is everything. Mind muscle connection is everything. So the better you can kind of improve this, the more growth you'll be able to get. Like I said, it comes naturally over time. You're gonna get it, but if you can kind of dial down your technique, if you can understand tempo, if you can understand kind of eccentric, then I think you'll be on a good path to kind of for muscle growth. But there's one more thing that we didn't talk about, and that is using full range of motion. So this is really important, and this is something else that is very personal based. So full range of motion is pretty much when you kind of, let's say a bench press for example, and you're doing barbell. Full range of motion would be to bring the bar all the way down and it touches your chest, and then fully lock out at the top. That would be called full range of motion. But there is a lot of controversy and kind of uncertainty, as I was saying in the very beginning, where you don't really know what to do, because there's some people that are telling you to go slightly above your chest or don't lock out. Once again, this is all very personal based. You know, it depends on if you have any injuries, depends on your goals. Is it strength? Is it muscle growth based? But I think a good rule of thumb would just be try it and kind of see if it feels good. If you don't feel any kind of weird discomforts, then just go for it. You know, try it out and see if it works for you. It's a great way to kind of build your mind muscle connection, because it's part of the whole eccentric thing. But I think we'll kind of end off at number 9, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch of things. I'm only kind of speaking on the whole training side of things, and if I do forget some things, which I probably am, I can always make a part 2, and we'll talk about it then. But pretty much lastly, I do want to mention rest intervals. Pretty much rest interval is the amount of rest that you're doing between your sets. So how many are you resting at all? Are you resting 30 seconds? Are you resting 2 minutes? You know, the point is, are you resting properly? Are you resting good enough that the next set will be an optimal set, so a fully efficient set? You're not going to waste that set because you're tired. So that is the kind of the magic question that you should ask yourself. And how much rest is enough is completely dependent on you, completely dependent on what you're doing. If you're doing something like legs, where you're going to be fully taxed, if you're going to failure for a set, then you need to be kind of resting as much as you actually need to get into that next set and really perform at your best. And I'm not saying, rest 10 minutes, just rest just enough to kind of catch your breath and get going to your next set. But it all depends on you, The point is, don't waste time and get the most out of your training. But I think that should be good for now. If I do forget some things, maybe I'll make a short out of it, or I'll make another video out of it. But you guys let me know. I'd appreciate if you guys left a like and subscribe to the channel. I'm very new to this whole thing, and I'm hoping to kind of help a lot of people out and really try to grow my following, this channel, and just overall, I just really appreciate everything, and then I hope to kind of help others make this crazy progress that I hope they can make.